Games of chance have existed for probably as long as humanity has existed. Cards, dice, coin tosses, spinning wheels, and making deals. We've done pretty well with ourselves when it comes to the realms of social interactions and connection. But what if they were the foundations of everything you ever knew? What if games of chance, or even games in general, were so important that they formed entire kingdoms? This question and more brings us to the topic of this week's video, Lost in Random, The Eternal Die, developed by Stormteller Games and distributed by Thunderful Publishing. It's a roguelite, and while you're no doubt sick to death of these, I'm not. And it's a pretty good one as well. So let's get out the dice and card sets, it's time to take a chance. The story of Lost in Random, The Eternal Die, is that you play as Alexandra, Queen of the Kingdom of Random. Based on what I've seen in the intro, she looked to be your stereotypical evil queen serving an even more evil eldritch power, when one day, said eldritch power overwhelmed and consumed her. Now trapped in Mare's game, as it's referred to as, and her power severely diminished, she seeks to fight her way through and reclaim her power and defeat Mare in the process. The one thing I found out after doing a lot of my preliminary research is that this is a sequel. Yep, there was another game that came up before this called simply Lost in Random that was developed by a different studio, and Alexandra was the antagonist in that one. A bit of whiplash to say the least, and they actually play with that in a lot of interesting ways. Alexandra is portrayed as an anti-heroine who's out for revenge, but also for the most part, wants to redeem herself for all of the messed up stuff that she did while in control of Random. And the story events that happen throughout the runs and at the Sanctuary in between said runs do a good job of illustrating that. The interactions that Alex has with the supporting cast can do a lot to illustrate it. They initially don't trust her because of her past actions, and you end up going out of your way to prove that the change is happening. And there are some entertaining characters here as well. The standouts have to be Manny Chex, the resident shopkeeper, and the rug reader, your purveyor of fine cosmetics. Those two and everyone else you talk to all have such strong personalities that I was looking forward to the conversations between runs. Heck, even the bosses you fight are great to talk to, with Alex's cousins, the Dublé twins, and Emma being contemptible while also being kinda funny at the same time. It's clear that a lot of the presentation and writing in The Eternal Die was heavily inspired by Hades. And that's fine because A, there's nothing wrong with cribbing from other stuff for inspiration, because that recontextualization is how humanity has told stories for as long as humanity has existed, and 2, it does a lot of its own thing using that same framework. Overall, The Eternal Die tells a tale of revenge and redemption, and for the most part pulls it off. And then there's the gameplay on top of that. The gameplay in Lost in Random is a roguelite of the isometric action variety, like a lot of games in the genre these days. And more specifically, it's a lot like Hades. The standard run structure of The Eternal Die is that you fight your way through 4 procedurally generated biomes, each capping off with a boss fight at the end, and then eventually fighting Mare/the Black Die himself to cap off the run. And if I'm being honest, that's kind of where the similarities to Hades begin and end, because a lot of the defining mechanics are so vastly different that they need to be talked about, chief among them being the items and trinkets. Every time you complete a room in the run, you get your choice of rewards, and most times, you're going to be getting items that augment your abilities. These are the building blocks of all the #build crafting that you're going to be doing in The Eternal Die. These range from stuff like increased damage on attacks, to increased status potency, to increased critical hit chance, stuff like that. And then we get into the more interesting stuff, like doubling down on specific effects and even empowering the shit out of them. And the way you do this? A goddamn match 3 game. I'm not making this up. Surrounding the items is a color border of one of 5 colors of red, blue, yellow, green, and purple. And when you get a vertical or horizontal matching line of 3 corresponding to one of the aforementioned colors, you get a 50% increase to one of these stats. And these represent melee damage for red, card damage for yellow, dice attacks for blue, conjurations for purple, and green for luck. If you, pun not intended, play your cards right, you can buff yourself up pretty incredibly. And that's just for the items, which can also be replaced by simply dropping another item on top of one of the pre-existing ones in the space on this grid. And then we get to the tokens, which are simply just there to accommodate the match 3 portions and are consumed when the bonus is paid out, leaving your space for future items and lines, which is fucking sweet. Now to talk about the part of the game that the stats interact with. You get a melee attack, a magical card attack that is chosen at the start of the run from a random pool, an attack in which Alexandra throws her adorable dice companion Fortune, which I have no idea what it does, but the dice attack interacts with blue item effects, so it can lead to some silly shit as well, like the dice landing on someone and doing increased damage when it lands on a 5 or 6. There's the conjurations, which are just elemental status effects and damage types like burning, chilling, electrocuting, poisoning, and time-stopping enemies. The 4 weapons also benefit from all of these effects as well. You start off with Alexandra's broken sword, but after finding and repairing the automaton rack, you can also gain access to 3 other weapons: a bow, a spear, and a hammer. And these can also be upgraded to seriously augment their abilities, like the hammer gaining armor when doing charge attacks, the bow doing scattershot attacks, and the spear becoming a lightning rod. And lastly, we get the passive upgrades. What makes these interesting is that while there is the usual stuff like increased health, health recovery from completing a combat encounter, etc., you also get swappable alternate perks like moving and attacking faster after throwing Fortune and dealing increased damage to bosses. It's not the most transformative set of perks in the world, but I like them. Between those, the quests you get from the side cast, the cosmetics, and the random encounters that spice things up, you start to see that there is a lot of things in the Eternal Die. Its combat feels great, and the randomness of the rewards and the certainty of the upgrades give it all a sense of chaos that I can't help but respect. And then there's the bosses, which are huge and take a concerted effort to take down. These are the highlight of the experience for me because of how genuinely challenging they can be at times. While the gameplay of Lost in Random: The Eternal Die does use a lot of the foundation that Hades uses, it doesn't ape them entirely. It uses them as a jumping off point to make its own changes and deviations as it sees fit. And that randomness plays a lot into it because of both the mechanics of keeping it fresh and as a means of storytelling. This takes place inside of the nightmare realm of a cursed dice block. Everything being at the whim of a dice roll makes perfect sense, and the fact that you can take that randomness and strike back with it is fucking great to see represented. That and how well the systems interlock and play with each other makes this one of my personal favorite roguelites. That feels right to say. It's that good. If there's another thing I gotta say about Lost in Random: The Eternal Die, is that it's an audio-visual feast. Between the art style being absolutely gorgeous to look at and being a neat take on being Burton-esque, the diversity of the biomes being the other lands in the setting, and the great voice acting and music. Seriously, the voice cast brings their A-game with this one. You've got a looker and sounder on your hands. This also extends to those cosmetics I talked about earlier. You get pieces of outfits and different casings for Fortune, and while they can be mixed and matched, they all look their best when wearing the full set. It's a goddamn treat. I like it a lot. Lost in Random: The Eternal Die is, in my humble opinion, a great roguelite, and one that really gets how the genre operates. All of the pieces have come together to make something special, and I'm not talking out of the side of my mouth on this one. This might be the best roguelite I've played that I'm seeing no one talk about, and that's a shame, because I'll beat on that drum until you all get sick of it. Go play this right now, you nerds. And that'll be it for the video. If you stuck around to the end, a like would be appreciated, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. Have a good weekend.